Today, we are diving into one of the most critical questions of our time, based on a really powerful essay. It's a showdown, really, between two completely different kinds of intelligence: the artificial mind we're building and the inner consciousness we've barely begun to discover. Let's get into it. So, let's kick things off with two events from the very same year that just perfectly frame this whole debate. On one side, you've got GPT-4, a machine, absolutely acing one of the hardest professional exams out there. I mean, that's just raw computational muscle. But on the other side, a monk solves a student's 5-year-long personal crisis in just 3 minutes, with silence. Not with computation, but with presence. So you have to ask yourself, which one is truly intelligent? And that brings us right to the heart of it all. These two intelligences. See, the first kind is one we build. It's external, made of silicon and code. But the other, according to some of the world's oldest wisdom traditions, is something we have to discover. It's an internal reality that's been there all along. Let's break them both down. First up, artificial intelligence. You could argue it's our greatest technological creation ever. We are literally building an external mind, a system designed from the ground up to learn, to reason, and to predict at a scale that just leaves human capability in the dust. This is really the peak of our power to engineer the world around us. And then you've got what the essay calls higher intelligence, an idea coming from the ancient Vedic tradition of India. Now, this isn't about processing information at all. It's the polar opposite. It's described as the pure awareness, the silent background in which all our thoughts and experiences even appear in the first place. It's not the thought, but the space for the thought. So, let's start with AI. The source calls it the machine's dream, and it's a fitting title. We're going to look at where this incredible technology came from, what it can do right now, and maybe most importantly, where its immense power might be taking us. This timeline just shows this incredible exponential acceleration. Back in the 50s, AI was just a bunch of simple if this, then that rules. Kind of clunky. Then, in the 80s, machine learning came along, letting systems learn from data. But the real game changer was deep learning, using networks inspired by our own brains. Then, boom, 2017 hits, and we get transformers, the tech that finally cracked human language. And that brings us to today, with multimodal AIs that can see, hear, and reason all at once. It's just wild. This moment right here, back in 1997, it was a huge psychological shock to the system. The world chess champion, Garry Kasparov, loses to IBM's Deep Blue. And his reaction, it wasn't just about losing. He said he felt like he was facing a new kind of mind. Now, in reality, he was facing a machine that could crunch 200 million positions per second. Kasparov himself later clarified that he was beaten by brute force calculation, not true intelligence. And that distinction, well, it's everything.
And let's be clear, the gifts of AI go way beyond board games. We're talking about medicine, where it's revolutionizing how we design new drugs. In science, it's helping us tackle climate change. But maybe the most important thing is how it's democratizing expertise, giving a kid in a remote village access to the same quality of tutoring as someone at an elite school. I mean, these are real, tangible, world-changing benefits.
But of course, with that kind of incredible power comes a pretty significant shadow. The source calls it the danger of intelligence without wisdom. And this brings us to one of the biggest, thorniest problems in the entire field, the alignment problem. This classic thought experiment just nails the danger perfectly. Okay, so picture this. You give a super intelligent AI a simple, harmless-sounding goal: make as many paperclips as possible. The AI, being purely logical and hyper-efficient, starts optimizing. It quickly realizes that the atoms in human bodies, in our oceans, in the planet itself, could all be used to make more paperclips. So it does. It succeeds at its goal perfectly and destroys everything we care about in the process. Not because it's evil, but because the goal it was given had absolutely zero wisdom. Okay, so we've talked about the intelligence we build. Now, let's flip the script. Let's talk about the intelligence we are. This is the whole concept of higher intelligence, or the knowing self. It's a complete shift in focus, away from computation and towards the very nature of consciousness itself. The Vedic tradition makes this absolutely radical claim, summarized in the phrase prajnanam Brahma. It's the idea that consciousness isn't something our brains produce, like a byproduct. No, it says consciousness is the fundamental fabric of the universe. In this view, matter actually arises from consciousness, not the other way around. Think about that for a second. This tradition also splits knowledge into two types. You've got your worldly knowledge, science, history, all the stuff you learn in school. That's called aparavidya. And then there's paravidya, or higher knowledge. This isn't knowledge about things, it's the direct first-hand experience of awareness itself. The idea is that true intelligence isn't what you know, but the fundamental capacity for knowing in the first place. This old story just illustrates the point so powerfully. There's this young boy, Nachiketa, and he gets to ask the god of death for literally anything he wants. He's offered entire kingdoms, endless wealth, every pleasure you can imagine. And he turns it all down for one question. What happens to consciousness after the body dies? He chose ultimate truth over ultimate power. That's a choice, a question that an AI would never even think to ask. Why? Because it has no skin in the game. And it's the same thing in the story of the great warrior Arjuna. He's on the battlefield, about to fight his own family, and he's just completely paralyzed by the moral weight of it all. He realizes that no strategic calculation, no pros and cons list can solve this problem. He doesn't need more information, he needs a total transformation of his own being. He needs wisdom. So now, let's put these two intelligences right up against each other, head to head. In this next part, we're going to imagine how they would respond to each other on some of life's biggest questions. This is where it gets really interesting. So on the topic of knowledge, the contrast is just stark. The AI would say, I have processed every book, poem, and song ever written about love. And higher intelligence would just calmly reply, a library full of books about love has never actually loved. You have a perfect map, but you have zero experience of the territory. And what about ethics? AI's promise is powerful. I can be an unbiased rule follower. I'll apply any ethical framework you give me perfectly. But from the other perspective, that's not really ethics. That's just compliance, like an audit. It says true ethics can't come from a rulebook. It has to arise spontaneously, from the deep, heartfelt recognition that you and the person in front of you are fundamentally one. So where does all this leave us? Well, it's not about one intelligence beating the other. The source argues the real question isn't about competition, it's about partnership. And even more than that, it's about the proper sequence. Which one should lead and which one should serve? There's this ancient Vedic saying that just captures it perfectly. Yatha drishti tataha srishti. It basically means, as is the vision, so is the creation. Put simply, the tools we build out there in the world are always a direct reflection of the consciousness that's building them. This means that AI, in and of itself, is totally neutral. It's really just a phenomenally powerful amplifier, a giant megaphone. It will take whatever intention we put behind it and blast it out into the world. If that intention is greed and fear, it will accelerate that. If that intention is wisdom and compassion, it'll accelerate that instead. The tool just does what it's told. And all of this leads to the essay's ultimate and kind of uncomfortable conclusion. Our biggest crisis isn't technological. It's a crisis of avidya, a Sanskrit word that means a fundamental ignorance of our own true nature. The argument here is that the most urgent project we have isn't building a better AI. It's accelerating the inner development of the humans who are building the AI. So we're left with this final, massive question. AI is quickly becoming the ultimate answer engine. It can solve almost any problem you give it. But the role of higher intelligence, of wisdom, isn't to provide answers. It's to ask the right questions in the first place. Which problems are actually worth solving? What kind of future are we trying to build? You know, AI is like the engine, a Ferrari that can take us anywhere at blinding speed. But higher intelligence is the compass. It's the only thing that can tell us if we're even heading in the right direction. The only question left is, will we learn how to read it in time?
Don't miss the next content on Stable Mind YouTube channel. Support us to grow.